A heartbreaking story out of Wimberley tonight where up to 12 people are still missing, including 2 families with children. They were swept away in the flood sometime after midnight Sunday when the house they were staying in reportedly broke apart.
They include the McComb family. You see here Laura McComb and her 2 children, Leighton and Andrew, who were vacationing at the time at a cabin on the Blanco River.
KXAN's Lindsey Bramson spoke today with Laura's sister, who was on the phone with her when their cabin was swept away.
We are in a house that is now floating down the river. Call Mom and Dad. I love you, and pray.
Those were the last words Julie Shields had with her sister Laura. She was on the phone with her when the cabin she was staying in with her husband Jonathan and 2 kids was carried away in the rushing water.
My sister will always be my sister.
The conversation ended when Laura thought she saw light from a helicopter above there to rescue them.
And I just expected to go to the Wimberley High School the next day and find her. And then when she wasn't there, I knew something was very, very wrong.
Jonathan was found 12 miles away and was taken to a San Antonio hospital for treatment. Laura and their 2 kids, Leighton and Andrew, still missing. Julie says Jonathan did everything he could to help save them, but the cabin eventually split apart, separating them.
The blessing in all of this is that she is with her children. And she is with her babies, and she will be with her babies always in heaven.
Search and rescue crews are hard at work along the Blanco River, still looking for the dozen or so people missing. They were also searching by air.
Our Phil Prazen was the only reporter allowed to go up in that helicopter with the Lieutenant Governor. Phil joins us now. Phil, I know it was hard for you guys. A lot of what you saw was absolutely devastating.
It's so sad, and the first thing the Lieutenant Governor pointed out to me was this concrete slab, pipe sticking out of the ground. He says, that's where those 3 families were staying. That's the last place people saw them. And from the air, this thing looks entirely different. On the ground, you can pick up the debris, you can pick up the tree branches, but in the air, you can see how big it is. The river totally doubled in size. The fire chief here says that the river was 20 feet higher than he's ever seen it before.
And this gives you a better idea of the damage. You can see the bridge near Fisher Road on the Blanco River was destroyed, washed away.
This debris shows just how high the Blanco River got at its peak. Now, this is Highway 165 extending west into Blanco, but this bridge that usually goes over the river is now resting in it.
I'm nervous. Heck, I grew up in these creeks and rivers.
Carol Walker lives near Blanco Settlement. The RVs on the river banks and the road that passed by didn't stand a chance when nature made its own path.
They came up so fast. We had literally 20 minutes to get out. I looked out my back window and literally saw a wall of water coming. And you just watch everything going away. And I heard a lady screaming in the river. And it's been horrible to have to live with the fact that there's nothing you could do for her.
Did you see that? Because all they saw was a forearm waving frantically.
They could hear her screaming in Spanish, and because of the raging water, Horton and his crew had a hard time getting to the woman.
She's like holding onto a tree and her body's like flaking out in the current.
They couldn't get their boats to her, but that's when Horton's homemade creation, small enough to carry on his uniform, became priceless.
Just enough for me to make the swim to her.
With 150 feet of rope, Horton swam to, put a life jacket on the woman, and brought her to land.
One of the most dramatic videos yet comes from a family in Leander who had to be rescued from their cabin on the river.
Oh, no!
As soon as the water came through the window, I knew that we were in trouble.
We have a Tahoe, and his brother has a truck. We just watched them float away like they were toy boats.
I think the worst thing was not knowing what was going to happen.
Oh, no! They described the rushing water like a freight train. They watched as it crashed through their cabin, water rising in just a matter of minutes.
Smelling fire and stuff after the water came in because the electrical stuff was burning up. So that's when I really started panicking.
Finally, flashing lights. Help was close by.
Pulled up with a boat, and from the second-story window, we just climbed into the boat. Me, and I was holding my daughter.
It's hard for Sarah to think about what if help hadn't come.
I'm sorry.
A rare sight, Max Starkey Dam, and that siren tells us that a 5th floodgate has now opened to relieve the pressure from upriver.
That is Shoal Creek pouring into Lady Bird Lake. David, let's look at that. Look at that flow right there. Again, if you've just joined us, stay away from Lamar Boulevard in the downtown area. Shoal Creek is out of its banks.
I want you to take a look at this video of Shoal Creek at its highest point. This is along Pease Park at MLK and Lamar. Water was covering the sand volleyball courts and coming all the way up to the road.
That water reached nearly 21 feet. We witnessed several water rescues where there's usually a sea of pavement rather than water. This one happened outside the Monarch condos near where Shoal Creek meets Lady Bird Lake. It's our best view of the flooding in downtown Austin from our Austonian weather camera. Look at that, the highest camera in Austin. From 700 feet up, we could see the scale of the flooding at House Park.
It is flooding House Park. I have never, in 25 years, seen anything like this. Look at Shoal Creek. Look at the football field. You can't see the football field. The water is into the bleachers. Somebody that appears to be holding on to a telephone pole. This is in real-time evidence of how dangerous the jobs that these men and women do who respond to flash flood situations. They got him. They got him out of there. Poor guy. Look at him.
He has to be exhausted.
He looks exhausted. He looks, oh, can you imagine how relieved he must be? He looks to be, I'm sure he's in some degree of shock right now. He was just in a life and death situation, and he has just been saved.
Tonight, a major update on the tragedy that struck Austin's music scene last spring.
People were running, crying, and somebody told us that a car had just driven through the crowd.
A driver mows down a street full of South by Southwest fans.
I ran up to see, but I got 2 feet away from her, and I knew that she was gone.
Prompting victims and their families to now fight back. We first told you on KXAN News at 5 o'clock they just filed lawsuits today.
Those lawsuits are against the 2 companies organizing the event, the traffic planner and the suspect, Rashad Owens. Remember, he is charged with driving drunk and causing the crash that injured 22 people and killed 4 others, including 18-year-old DeAndre Tatum, 26-year-old Sandy Lee, 27-year-old Jamie West, and 35-year-old Stephen Cranmere. I sat down with Stephen's wife and Jamie's husband to talk about life after the crash and why they say these lawsuits are part of their healing. For Stephen Cranmere, life's greatest joy was his baby son, Mick. He was there when the baby boy was born 2 months early.
Go on. Go on.
And when he took his first steps.
Go on. Go on. Yeah!
You might say Stephen's other child was his music. This year was his 2nd South by Southwest, scouting talent. But he was less excited about going this year. He didn't want to leave his wife Lizzie and baby Mick. Lizzie from her home in the Netherlands.
I saw it on news online that was there was 2 victims in a crash of South by Southwest. So, and I called him, and I called him, and I called him.
But Stephen never picked up the phone.
It's the hardest time ever. It's from heaven to hell. It's not fair.
Why do you feel like filing this lawsuit is important?
South by Southwest is accountable for this tragedy, in my thought.
Sorry.
Evan West wasn't far from Stephen Cranmere. He and his wife Jamie were sharing a moped.
Do you remember anything at all about the crash?
No. No.
Evan and Jamie moved to Austin 3 years ago. The musical, artsy vibe of the place, pulling them south from home in the Midwest. And Jamie was an incredible artist.
It's everywhere. Every little speck of this place has... Sorry.
It's okay. Has her in it.
Yeah. We tried to live a life and be good people. You need people just trying to be good, do good. And it can be in the smallest ways. Jamie threw like little arts and trinkets and just, you know, being friendly and kind. But that's a huge loss because there's not enough of it.
Evan doesn't remember being told Jamie had died, didn't even know she'd been buried. His injuries were so severe, he spent 4 months in a hospital bed.
What do you hope to accomplish?
I mean, for it to... I mean, I'm doing this because the goal is for it to... I'm doing it because the goal is for it to not happen again. It's... That's the biggest thing, is that people shouldn't go through this.
Lizzie is determined baby Mick will always know his dad.
Steven make a lot of own music. So Mick says in the morning, hey, Papa, music. So we listen and we dancing in the morning.
But there will be a lifetime of firsts he'll never see. And we have reached out to South by Southwest for comment. A spokesperson said, quote, what happened on Red River was a terrible tragedy caused by Rashad Owen's utter disregard of human life. Our hearts continue to ache for those injured and the families of those who lost their lives. We look forward to his prosecution for his awful crimes. If you think about how many times we get our oil changed, Brian, this really could add up.
That's right, because a lot of cars these days use this kind of oil. It's synthetic oil, and an oil change can be about $100. Compare that to regular oil, which can run about $20 for an oil change. So we decided to test oil. We picked several oil shops at random, and this is what we found.
The last time we were here, we were sold Mobil 1 synthetic oil. But we went and we had it tested at a lab, and we didn't get Mobil 1 synthetic. Can we talk to you about that?
The owner of Lakeway Quick Lube didn't want to talk when I showed up to ask her about the oil her mechanics put in our cars.
Can we just talk to you about why we didn't get the oil that we paid for?
I'm not sure. On 2 different visits, we paid for high-grade synthetic oil. We took samples of the oil and sent them to Alcor Petrolab. The blue line shows what premium synthetic oil looks like. Not even close to the red line showing the oil the Lakeway shop sold us.
Neither of those samples performed well in any of the tests that we looked at when you compare that to known samples of synthetic oil, what was claimed on the invoice.
Can we leave these test results with you? Let me just show you what we did real quick. We came in here.
I needed you to leave, please. You have to talk to my husband. I don't know what's going on.
But you're the owner and the manager.
It appears that we bought something, but you didn't give it to us. You gave us the conventional oil.
The shop's lawyer says its bulk oil will likely test differently than the individual bottled product. Our lab expert says the chemical makeup is the same either way. During our hidden camera investigation, we went undercover to 10 oil change shops across Central Texas, including Brad's Oil in San Marcos, Coleman's at the Y in Oak Hill, and Jiffy Lube on North Lamar near the UT campus. We also tested this Quick Car in North Austin near the Arboretum and Express Oil Change in Cedar Park. We paid for synthetic oil at each, and that's exactly what we got.
You caught them essentially telling the truth.
Our investigation started because of a tip about a chain called True Balance Express.
It's a ripoff.
After this former employee told us he took these photos showing mechanics filling jugs labeled synthetic with cheap conventional oil.
They're doing their oil changes, but they're telling you it's Castro or Mobil 1, and it's not. It's cheap oil.
And why are they doing that?
It's money, profit, all for profit.
So we sent our producer undercover to get oil changes at all 4 True Balance shops in Round Rock, Elgin, North Lamar, and in South Austin off West Slaughter.
Yeah, I want to get the best you got.
Start off at $89.99.
Not a single sample you sent us performed in the manner that we would expect for the synthetic oils that were claimed on the invoice.
Hi, you Brandon? I caught up with the owner of True Balance, Brandon Harris, at the West Slaughter Shop and read him the lab results. 6 lab tests, all showing that we paid for synthetic but got cheap conventional oil at your shops. How can you dispute that?
I'm not disputing anything. I'm telling you what we do to our customers. But they order synthetic oil, we give them synthetic oil.
But that's not what you did to us 6 times. And this former employee says it's Harris who instructs his mechanics to use the cheap oil.
I don't understand. This has come out of nowhere. I haven't got no customer complaint from nobody.
Well, how is a customer supposed to be able to tell when you don't give them synthetic oil? We had to pay hundreds of dollars to get lab tests done to prove it. Maybe that's the reason you do it, because nobody can tell.
I have no other comment.
Every time Moses Perez lays his newborn daughter down, she reminds him of the mother she's missing.
I mean, every picture her mom has is just constant smile.
Moses and his fiancée, Jessica Rodriguez, were planning their wedding and overjoyed at the arrival of little Alyssa.
Aww.
But just 2 days after giving birth,
I get a call from the head nurse at the hospital telling me I needed to hurry up and get back to the hospital.
Jessica died suddenly from complications with the pregnancy.
It's a life-changing moment.
This is the last picture she ever took.
Are you hungry?
3 months later, as a single dad, Moses says he struggles to provide for his family, now facing Jessica's medical bills and funeral costs. Then, the kindness of a stranger, almost too good to be true.
Looking back, do you wish you asked more questions?
If I could go back, I would.
Fallon Mouton was someone the family had never met, the sister of one of Jessica's co-workers. She'd set up an account on the website GoFundMe.com, one of several crowdfunding sites asking donors to give money online for almost anything. Mouton's account claimed helping a family make ends meet. But if you look closely, these sites warn there's no way to 100% guarantee that a user's page contains accurate or truthful information, and donors should only contribute to users they personally know and trust.
You know, I figured it was just a helping hand out there looking out for one another.
But within days, it looked like Mouton had disappeared, along with the $4,600 she'd raised.
They can open up an account, keep it active for a week or so, shut it down, and then move on to find some other victim.
Taylor Police Chief Henry Fluke says Mouton is now a suspect in this case.
This could be one of many internet scams that have been perpetrated by the same individuals.
Still, after 7 weeks, Taylor Police had yet to locate Mouton, so we decided to track her down ourselves. Several phone numbers listed under her name were disconnected.
The number you dialed is not a working number.
Her social media accounts were gone. We even found some of her family in the Austin area who wouldn't talk.
Is it possible that you could open your door for me for a few minutes?
So we headed south, nearly 400 miles across the state line to her last known location outside Lafayette, Louisiana.
Does this woman look familiar to you?
Yes.
Going door to door until we finally found Mouton.
Fallon Mouton, Lindsey Bramson with KXAN out of Austin. Can I ask you a few questions? Are you cooperating with Taylor Police? I know they've been looking for you as well.
I have not gotten any phone calls or anything from Taylor Police, and I don't find that I need to tell them anything because if they have any evidence, they can contact my local police.
So you didn't take the money out of the account?
No, I did not. I have no debit cards, no banking accounts, no checking accounts, no nothing. I mean, I have no need or no reason to steal any money from anybody.
$4,600 to this family is a lot of money.
I understand that.
She told us she closed the account and GoFundMe has the money.
They have no proof of anything. I have verification of emails that the money is being refunded.
But in an email, GoFundMe tells KXAN, unfortunately, the full balance of the campaign in question was withdrawn by the account holder before we received any complaints, which is why the matter is now in the hands of local law enforcement.
We served 2 subpoenas.
The Taylor Police Chief confirms GoFundMe is cooperating with his department.
That has nothing to do with me.
We showed him what Mouton had to say after we paid her a visit.
As far as her account of the story, I do not find it believable, and the facts and the evidence do not support her version of the story.
And now there's a felony warrant out for her arrest for defrauding donors online.
And I also want to commend Lindsay, yourself, and KXAN for having the initiative and the effectiveness to track her down and locate her. It's very impressive.
The chief says 85 people in this case will probably never see their money again.
I mean, she can change anybody's day around you.
And neither will Jessica's family. Still, they hope to find a way to at least afford a headstone for her grave.
Just simple, a plaque with a paper and her name.
A marker for the mother little Alyssa lost.
Every night before we lay down to bed, we do a little prayer, and we always at the end say, "We love you, Mommy, we miss you, Mommy, and good night, Mommy."
Now, breaking news from KXAN News.
Welcome back, everyone. 8:30 is the time. Live team coverage of what first came out as an active shooter in downtown Austin after 2 o'clock this morning. Started out at the federal courthouse, then to the Mexican consulate. We're told the shooter was targeting those buildings. And what you see right here is APD's bomb squad robot surrounding a white vehicle. This is parked off of 8th Street and right off of I-35. It's in front of APD headquarters.
APD headquarters is just behind me off in the distance, so it only makes sense as to why police felt it necessary to shut down I-35.
Take a listen, and I'm going to listen along with you for the first time. What sounds like multiple gunshot rounds. Wow. Yeah, exactly. This is in downtown Austin and really captures what Austin police were hearing and dealing with.
We saw the bomb squad not only in full gear going into the vehicle to take a look. Now it's all changed. They've taken off their bomb gear and they're just in regular clothes going through the vehicle.
Downtown Austin under attack. As the city's nightlife winds down and hundreds head home, a gunman opens fire.
Many rounds were fired in downtown Austin. This time of the night, it's really dangerous.
Several sites, targets, including Austin Police Headquarters.
They noticed what appeared to be an improvised explosive device in the vehicle.
KXAN takes an in-depth look at the threat and the search for answers.
I want to know the motive behind it.
Right now, we continue to gather new information about this morning's shooting spree through downtown Austin. Police identified the gunman as Larry Steve McWilliams. Police say around 2:20 this morning, McWilliams fired hundreds of rounds into the federal courthouse building, the Mexican consulate, and Austin Police Headquarters. McWilliams did not hit anyone, but shortly after the attack began, he was dead. Police don't know if it was their bullet or McWilliams that killed him, but investigators searching McWilliams' apartment walked out with these tanks that look like they hold propane. Chief Art Acevedo says McWilliams used small portable camping propane tanks to try and ignite the Mexican consulate building. Well, this investigation into this morning's shooting immediately moved to McWilliams' apartment in South Austin.
This scene is clear, but earlier today, because of the attack on the government buildings and also because of the weapons used, officers wanted to be very careful, so a full-on SWAT operation took place right here, not knowing what they may find inside.
All the noise started around 5 in the morning.
There were a bunch of policemen banging on the doors near us.
Banging at the South Creek apartments, telling them to get out because there was a possible danger.
So I said, was this a bomb threat? And she kind of hinted that, well, yeah, maybe it is. And so I thought, well, is my cat going to be safe here?
Over the next several hours, SWAT officers and SWAT trucks came and went. Then fire engines came in and hooked up hoses to hydrants because they didn't know just how explosive the situation could be inside.
They said, well, just watch the news. You'll know because it'll be on the news.
Eventually, all the big trucks left and just a few officers with a single crime scene ribbon remained. The threat of danger was gone, but now neighbors realize just how close it had been.
We basically lived 200 feet from my kitchen window.
And you saw in that piece those boxes that had the gas can and also several of those small propane cylinders that we've mentioned, very similar to what was found at the Mexican consulate.
He spoke with a neighbor today.
That's right. She told me she would never think McWilliams would do something like this. She confirmed his Facebook page. His profile picture changed early this morning before the shooting. A neighbor says friends knew Larry McWilliams as Steve. Here on his Facebook page, a new picture of what appears to be a tarot card. McWilliams' Facebook page gives us a look into his interests. He has posts about preparing for a Renaissance festival and a picture of him floating.
I was just really sad because I knew Steve as a kind person.
Neighbor Katie Matlack says she thinks McWilliams was having trouble finding a job and lived at the apartment building for more than a year. Now, we also found a 1992 article from a local newspaper that shows a Stephen McWilliams who police say tried to rob an armored car. The address given for that suspect in the article matches an address where records show the suspected shooter today might have been living.
Right now at KXAN.com, you can find this interactive timeline map with our coverage. The first calls came in at 2:22 this morning. Reports of shots fired here near the federal courthouse building.
You believe your mother was sexually assaulted in that nursing home?
I do. I do believe that she was sexually assaulted.
A KXAN investigation into a family's allegation. Someone sexually assaulted an elderly mother at an Austin assisted living facility, Longhorn Village. Our investigation uncovered more problems in the system that's supposed to protect your loved ones. Last May, we revealed the state agency responsible for investigating that case broke the law by not contacting law enforcement.
As a result, the state launched an internal review of that case and hundreds of others. KXAN investigator Brian Collister broke this story and now has more on the fallout.
Thousands of senior citizens live in nursing and assisted living homes across Texas. When a report of alleged abuse, neglect, or exploitation comes into the Department of Aging and Disability Services, or DADS, the law says the agency must notify law enforcement within 24 hours so it can conduct a criminal investigation.
They broke the law. I think people should be concerned about this.
The American Association of Retired Persons says it's concerned DADS never reported more than 1,500 of these cases. That's 78% of all cases in just the last 2 years.
It's appalling, quite frankly. I mean, folks are depending on the state agency that licenses and regulates these facilities to follow the laws and the regulations, and the fact that the agency isn't following a law that's designed to protect these folks is appalling.
It's unacceptable, and I want to find out why. Why is it happening?
State Senator Jane Nelson helped pass legislation to make the reporting a requirement. And she says she didn't know the state wasn't following the law.
Why not? Why didn't they do their job? I mean, I can pass legislation, but I expect that our state agencies will certainly abide by the laws that we pass.
To find out why not, we went straight to the top, to the man in charge at DADS.
Your agency is required by law to report allegations of abuse, neglect, and exploitation to law enforcement within 24 hours. But in more than 1,500 cases, you didn't do that. Why not?
It appears that we did not do a good enough job of communicating that obligation out to our staff. Once it came to our attention, once your investigation brought it to our attention, we took action.
By notifying law enforcement agencies across the state of the cases it's failed to report, even those where their own investigators substantiated claims of abuse according to these DADS reports, including in Waxahachie, where a resident was found deceased outside with severe burns on his arms. In Fort Worth, staff failed to contact emergency services in a timely manner when resident complained of having a heart attack. The resident died. And in Bedford, due to facility neglect, the resident sustained a burn with blister the size of a cantaloupe. Dad says law enforcement was eventually notified by facility staff or family members in many cases, although it cannot say exactly how many. Even so, state investigators are still required to report every allegation they receive within 24 hours.
This was an important procedural requirement, and it did take place in many cases, but in many cases it did not.
It didn't take place in 78% of the cases.
There's no question that this was systemically an area where we fell down on.
And failing the same senior citizens they're supposed to be protecting.
We need to know numbers. We need to know every case should be reported. So we know, what's happening, what can we do to do things differently? Are we doing our job of making sure that these vulnerable individuals are being protected, both in our nursing homes and assisted living?
Because of our investigation, the Longhorn Village case we mentioned at the top of this report went to the Travis County Sheriff's Office for investigation. We're told it's now complete and in the hands of the district attorney.
Sudden infant death syndrome, something many parents worry about in babies up to 1 year old. But even after that point, there is another condition you need to know about. It's called sudden unexplained death in childhood. Our Sally Hernandez discovered, unlike SIDS, it can affect toddlers to teenagers.
Madeline, who's that? Is that your brother?
Baby Madeline sleeps in what used to be his crib, listens to the same music he loved, and sees his pictures all over the house. But she never got to actually meet her older brother, Moss.
This one is from Easter morning last year. Sorry. And he passed away 5 days later.
Moss was the first child for Jessica and Jay Peratt. Jessica says it was a typical morning in April. Moss had a slight fever, but they thought the 14-month-old was just teething.
I gave him breakfast and he was acting kind of tired, so I said, okay, I'll go ahead and put him down for his morning nap.
A short time later, when Jessica went back to check on Moss, he wasn't breathing. She screamed for Jay to call 911. EMS got a faint pulse and rushed Moss here to the emergency room at Dell Children's Medical Center, where he spent the next 36 hours on life support.
Trying to salvage whatever little bit that you can of what you know is your last moments with your child.
They sang him his favorite lullaby and told him how much they loved him one last time.
Once we knew that that he wouldn't survive this, I encouraged him to let go.
Moss's death is not only unexpected, it is unexplained. Doctors have no answers, and the autopsy shows nothing unusual.
So that left us confused that why did Moss pass away?
It's called sudden unexplained death in childhood, or SUDC. And last year, it affected 387 toddlers and teenagers nationwide. Here in Texas, from 2008 to 2012, SUDC claimed 201 children, 14 in Central Texas.
It's unpredictable and unpreventable at this time.
Laura Crandall lost her 15-month-old daughter to SUDC 17 years ago. And today she is behind a grassroots movement for research dedicated to finding a cause. But SUDC cases are rare, and so is the research.
The research that has been done over the last several years has all been done by private donations, mostly from families who are affected, trying to change the future. We have not received government funding for research in this regard to date.
I was 4 months pregnant when Moss passed away, and then Madeline was born, and I will say that was the most peaceful day I felt since Moss passed away.
And Madeline looks just like her brother.
It was such a gift to us in a time when we were so sad.
And in the middle of that sadness, a sign of their undying love for Moss. Madeline's middle name is Moss, forever connected to the big brother she never knew.
He was so young when he passed away, but I don't have any doubt in my mind that he would have just been a perfect older brother.
We are in a drought. Lake levels are down and water is limited. So for the past month, KXAN has been investigating who is using water from our lakes without paying for it. All along, the Lower Colorado River Authority has told us it's a small percentage of people. But one day before our investigation was set to air, the LCRA has changed its message, saying every gallon of water is important. KXAN investigator Brian Collister is at Lake Travis now, where the LCRA says now it is going to step up enforcement. Brian?
Shannon, it all starts with locating these PVC pipes right here. This one comes from a house just up over the ridge and goes right into Lake Travis. Now, there are lots of people around here who pay for the privilege of pumping water from the lake. They actually sign contracts with LCRA to pay for it. But there are thousands of others who are stealing water just to keep their lawns green. It's almost noon on Lake Travis and the temperature creeping close to 100. This LCRA ranger spots a lakefront homeowner watering outside of the time allowed.
Just a bad use of our resources, and that's what we're out here trying to prevent.
LCRA must now figure out if that water is coming from one of these pipes, and if so, whether or not the homeowner has a contract to pay for it. KXAN has been asking LCRA about the problem for weeks, and now, the day before our full report is set to air, LCRA is clamping down. Because of our investigation, you're now taking unprecedented steps to catch people stealing water. What exactly are you doing?
What we're doing is we're increasing our presence on the lakes. We're increasing our presence out there to try to make sure that people understand that they need to have a contract with LCRA if they're going to take water from the reservoirs.
Right now, LCRA has contracts with 3,700 people along lakes like Travis, Buchanan, and LBJ. But it estimates another 3,300 are taking water without permission. LCRA has gotten thousands of illegal water users over the past 7 years to sign up by threatening to report them to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. But now, in response to our investigation, LCRA says it will forward future cases straight to TCEQ, which will issue a citation and fine.
Now is the time for us to be able to put some additional resources out there to try to make the point that it's really the right thing for people to do, and it's the law.
Well, this week we first told you about the historic impact on the ongoing drought having on our Highland lakes. The LCRA says this is now the worst drought our region has experienced since the lakes were built in the 1930s. It even trickles down to Lake Austin, the city's lifeblood, where it draws most of its drinking water.
KXAN investigator Kevin Schwaller also discovered the drought forced leaders to make decisions that have actually upset the environmental balance below the lake's surface.
The future of wildlife, plants, and even people around Lake Austin depend on its waters.
My oldest son, he's 3, and I'm taking out here fishing with his grandfather before. And back then, you know, the lake was a little bit different. It was a little clearer, water was a little clearer.
Something is changing these waters. John Ward sees the shift. He's an angler and works with the Texas Tournament Zone organizing bass fishing competitions.
We'll go look around and see what we can find.
He guided us through this lake where aquatic plant life is now largely gone.
You can still see some reeds right on the edge of the lake there. They used to come out a good 20 yards. They were solid all the way down.
Beneath us, only their remnants.
There's one.
Bass and other fish no longer have the same plants for hiding or to use as habitat.
A little fish.
The best bass catches topped 13 pounds on this trophy fishing lake. Now, John says a good catch is harder to come by. One of the things John believes is changing this lake, thousands of sterile grass carp the city of Austin put in the lake and the state approved. In recent years, number of carp put in the lake exploded. The city was combating record growth of the invasive hydrilla plant. They believe it poses safety risks and could lead to flooding. As the hydrilla grew, the city kept stocking. 6,000 carp in December 2011. In 2012, they put in more than 17,000 more carp, then 9,000 more in May of 2013. More in 18 months than in the entire previous 7 years combined.
Do you believe Texas Parks and Wildlife approved too many carp to be stocked into Lake Austin?
What I believe is that we stocked as many carp we needed to stock to see a reduction in hydrilla. And unfortunately, because of the circumstances that are beyond our control, it turned out to be too many.
Marcus De Jesus manages Lake Austin for Texas Parks and Wildlife. His office had to approve the carp. Marcus also does vegetation studies on the lake. Here's what his office found in February 2013. Mostly hydrilla grew on the lake. That's the green. By September, about all the hydrilla was gone, and the yellow is mostly another plant. But this past November, nothing. Marcus saw no submerged plant life. What did you think when you first saw that?
I wasn't happy because obviously our part of the equation is to maintain aquatic vegetation. And as a biologist, my efforts now are concentrated to actually restore that vegetation.
Marcus says it wasn't just the carp. A harsh winter and other animals that eat plants are also to blame. But the carp was a human decision, and Marcos says it seems the fish that were supposed to dine on the hydrilla are now munching on native plants too.
So it's a learning experience, and so we went off scientific literature and worked with our partners, including Texas Parks and Wildlife.
City engineer Chris Harrington maintains Austin was acting on the best information it had. Is the lack of vegetation damaging Lake Austin?
It is. We want a healthy and diverse vegetation community that's primarily populated with our native and adaptive species.
I think things we could do is actually improve habitat by adding habitat to the lake. Sunken brush piles, for example. That's great for fishing, and that's something we're planning to do. We're also planning to remove some of the grass carp.
An effort to return balance.
How long is that going to take? That's the question everyone wants an answer to.
And it's one without a clear answer. Something's changing this lake.
It's going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be over the next few years for sure.
Now John is watching to see what kind of change time will bring.
Anger and emotion spilled over like never before 1 year ago at the Texas State Capitol.
I'm here to protect life. I'm here because I believe in women's rights.
A standoff over a bill severely limiting abortions drew worldwide attention and sparked a new debate over women's health here at home.
House Bill 2 is finally passed.
Some here today will believe that this fight has been waged and won.
Now we go inside one of the few clinics still open in the aftermath of lawmakers' decisions, and our legislative roundtable breaks down the impact the law has made since that moment, plus the political fallout from the race for governor to the end of an era. Good morning. Thank you for joining us for a special edition of State of Texas in Depth. I'm Josh Hinkle, and today we come to you from outside the upper chamber of the legislature, the Texas Senate. 1 year ago, right here, perhaps the loudest political fight in the state's history. The gallery was packed, and all eyes were on one woman standing on the Senate floor.
Please accept this copy of my testimony.
Democratic Senator Wendy Davis of Fort Worth stood for 11 hours filibustering a Republican-backed bill that would bring some of the toughest restrictions on abortion in the nation.
Overwhelming to see how many people have been willing to be civically engaged in a way that is respectful of civil discourse, but also in a way that says we demand to be heard.
Her efforts ran up the clock well into the evening. Lawmakers missed the midnight deadline to take a vote, but Governor Rick Perry, who initially told the legislature to tackle this issue, called them back the very next day. And within a few weeks, the bill was back on the floor and passed this time, signed into law soon after.
It is our responsibility and duty to give voice to the unborn.
What a change that signature made. Take a look. In 2011, 46 Texas clinics provided abortions. Once the law takes full effect this September, most predict there will be just 6 left. They must all have an ambulatory surgical center. When you walk into the Whole Woman's Health Clinic in San Antonio, it's just like you're in the operating room at a hospital.
Be able to transfer somebody back to their recovery area.
The doors are wide enough for a stretcher to roll through, the spaces are much bigger, and there is even a docking bay for an ambulance. The reasons why this site will be one of just 6 clinics left performing abortions in the state.
It's a sterile environment.
But Andrea Ferrigno says early-term abortions often require only
the medical abortion pill. It's very, very simple procedure. It could be completely offered in a consultation office, in a counseling room.
Ferrigno, who helps lead this statewide health group, says they had to close down most of their clinics, including the one in Austin. It had smaller exam rooms and recliners in the recovery area. The San Antonio site was already an ambulatory surgical center, what the new law requires, no matter the type of abortion. And it can be expensive to maintain.
You have to include the cost of supplies, staffing, physical plant, and it increases to the thousands of dollars.
For each woman the clinic serves. Most are low income, and Ferrigno says Whole Woman's Health often helps them pay for the services, but it will be tough in the future.
We are expecting to see an increase in patients that will be traveling great distances to access the services they need.
A mysterious death on a dark and lonely Central Texas road. 3 years ago, we first told you about 36-year-old Isela Moreno found badly injured in the middle of Texas Highway 71 between Smithville and LaGrange. She died soon after, and her case is still unsolved. Tonight, Isela's family, desperate for answers, speaks with KXAN investigator Kevin Schwaller.
Every day she would call me.
Gloria Adkins cherishes memories of talking with her daughter, Isela Moreno.
She never wanted me to say bye. At the end of the conversation, it was always later, gator. Never bye.
Isela never got to say goodbye. What happened here?
And I lost it.
Led to another call.
And he told me that
she'll never forget.
They had found her on 71, and that they didn't know if a car had ran over her. She had gotten thrown out of the car.
Isela died. Lieutenant David Byer with the Fayette County Sheriff's Office says investigators soon started looking at the case as a homicide.
But we do feel like some type of struggle did happen out there that night, or which caused her to end up in the middle of Highway 71.
A short walk off the road at this rest stop, the main piece of evidence.
There was some type of, I guess you could say, sexual activity that occurred in that area there, because we did find a used condom, and that's what gives us the DNA.
DNA investigators say matched Isela and an unknown man.
Finding that evidence that day definitely was, it was like, we got a chance to clear this case.
But it was raining the night she died, possibly washing away other evidence. Then another challenge. Investigators had to start checking into numerous places and people because Byer said Isela used drugs and was possibly involved in prostitution.
No, but that doesn't mean that she can be just forgotten. You know what I mean? She was a mom, a grandma, a daughter, a sister, and now I don't have that. Somebody took that from me.
Yes, sir.
Message saved.
I've got some phone messages here on my work phone that I have never deleted.
Message saved.
And a few of those phone messages are from Isela's mother. And because it reminds us.
Mama, thank you for your work. Thank you.
Byer believes there might be only two people who ever knew what happened, Isela and her killer.
And I would greatly appreciate it if somebody would come forward and say something. I really would. Because it's very hard. It's very hard on me.
I want to see somebody pay for what they've done. But is it going to bring me that closure that I need, that I'm wanting? I don't know.
Because memories are now all they have. Kevin Schwaller, KXAN, investigates.
A deadly bridge crash brings Interstate 35 to a halt. Right now, traffic is still backed up for miles. Tonight, we take an in-depth look at what happened and whether this could happen near you.
One person dead, 3 others injured after an oversized tractor-trailer rig slammed into a bridge along I-35 in Salado.
That bridge is under construction, and TxDOT says the 18-wheeler was too tall to clear it. The truck knocked several of the beams down onto the road. Right now, I want to show you how this is impacting traffic. That crash has closed I-35 in both directions. You see that the traffic has been diverted, so I-35 there in the green, that's because there's no one on it. KXAN's Chris Sadeghi has been following the developments all day, and he is live with the latest. Chris?
Well, Shannon, yes, the traffic, as you mentioned, being diverted here on the service roads. It will be that way a while. We're told this highway will not open up anytime soon, likely well into the night. The bridge, though, is under construction. It is a new bridge, but TxDOT said it was not a bridge collapse, but a collision that brought the beams down. Look at the video, and you'll see 2 beams fell down, one on a southbound semi, the other on a northbound semi. Somewhere in the incident, a white pickup truck was crushed and the driver killed. Altogether, 3 semis, 2 pickup trucks were involved. TxDOT said one of the semis had a load that was too tall and brought the beams down. TxDOT also said they have signs showing the bridge's clearance height posted 3 times in the 2 miles leading up to the bridge. Semi-trucks do have access to maps and data that tell them which route they should take depending on how high their load. This is a new bridge under construction.
TxDOT was in the middle of replacing the FM 2484 bridge over Interstate 35. This is part of a broader $70 million project to improve I-35 traffic through Salado. We have learned every truck you see in Texas is supposed to be within a certain size, up to 14 feet tall, 8.5 feet wide, and no more than 65 feet long.
Any bigger, and truck drivers need to make sure they're on a route away from low bridges and other obstacles. KXAN investigator Robert Maxwell is here with why these rules are so important.
And they really are. And of course, we're still working to find out what exactly happened in Salado today. But we can tell you collisions with bridges do happen. Remember, the evening of July 25th, 2012, here in Austin, a truck carrying a forklift slammed into the Stasny Lane Bridge. The collision sent concrete debris onto the highway, I-35 again, and shut down traffic for hours. TxDOT tells us sometimes truckers may scrape the bottom of a bridge and never report it. We found out since 1995, trucks hit bridges at least 6 times here in Central Texas.